I know that, Barna Research has done a wonderful job over the years. I mean, you guys have trained thousands of leaders around the country. I really enjoyed your latest book, one of your latest books. I think you've written 35 or something, right? I mean, around there, but
38.
30, who's counting?
Yeah,
Right. But George, really, you've done a wonderful job. And matter of fact, many would say that you're the most quoted person in and about the church. And I know when I'm in conversations, I always hear Barna said this and Barna said that.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is I'm the most misquoted person about matters related to the church, but that's another story. Yeah.
But you know what I wanted to kind of bring to light is I know your passion. I know your heart, I really do, as we become friends. I know your love for Christ and your desire to really reach this generation with the message of Jesus. And I know some people would read this information and may say it's negative. It's negative about the church, but you don't see it that way at all, really. I mean, share a little bit about what's happening there.
Yeah, it always surprises me when people look at the statistics and say, oh, there goes Barna bashing the church again. I'm not making up the numbers. Yes. I'm just reporting the reality of it. Our goal when we started the company 24 years ago was to try to provide an objective source of information for church leaders so that they could be more strategic and make better decisions to serve God in a better way. Now, if you read the numbers and you don't like the way they are, it's not my fault,
Yes.
And so I would say you don't have to like the numbers, you just have to deal with the numbers. If I didn't like the church, I wouldn't pay any attention to it.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is just bring some objectivity to understanding the context and the approach that churches are using and ministries overall are using to try to affect people's lives.
What would you say to youth leaders that are listening to this, even the data that you get from ages, let's say 11 to 18 something, or even going into the 20 something age group, that, how can they be more effective as leaders?
When we're talking about working with young people, keep in mind, if this is not your passion, get out of the way. Let people who are passionate about this do it. If you're not the one, that's fine. There's a different ministry for you. God's got a place for everybody. But if that's not what keeps you up at night, thinking about kids, worrying about kids, dreaming about kids, and what you can do to see them become more like Christ, get out of the way. Let somebody else who is called to that and is passionate about it do it. But if you do have that passion, then it's important that you use everything that God has given to you for that particular ministry, because our research shows that working with kids is the single most important ministry you can ever be involved in.
George.
Why do I say that? I say that because as we look at how people's lives change, what we find is that your moral convictions are pretty much set in stone by the age of 9. Your spiritual beliefs are pretty much determined by the age of 13. Your beliefs and perceptions about the church and your spiritual moorings pretty much in place by the age of 13 or 14. And then the teenage years, the 3 or 4 years after your adolescent years, are the years where you're now taking those convictions and those perceptions and those beliefs and trying to figure out, now, how do I work that into who I am? How do I apply all of that to make me become the person that I believe I should become? And so anybody working with people between the ages of about 3 and 18, this is where it all happens. This is where you become the person that you're going to be for the rest of your life. Do we see change after the age of 18 in people's lives? Yes, but it's minimal. What is poured into place as the foundation before the age of 18, that's the game.
George, what pressures are you finding that youth pastors are facing today as they serve in student ministry?
This idea of, you got 3, 4, 5 years and then you're too old, get out. Move on to being an associate pastor, move on to being a senior pastor, move into parachurch ministry, something else. What we found, interestingly, is that kids are not looking necessarily for young people to be their leaders and mentors. They're looking for people who are credible, people who are consistent, people who are different by virtue of what their faith has done in their life. If that's a 25-year-old, great. It's a 45-year-old, great. We actually found that the Mosaic generation, this younger generation that's in place today in America, relates better to people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s than they do to people in their 20s and 30s. And that, of course, assumes that those people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s have really walked the walk for a long period of time. Because they're looking at these people and saying, wow, they figured out how to do it over the long haul. I bet there's something I can learn. I bet I can relate. And they tend to be relational people because that's one of the lessons that they've learned. It's not about what I've accomplished. It's about who I am.